1.
Hello, I'm Jeanette, and we got Hen. We are going to be doing our book club, Be Holy for I Am Holy book club. And we're currently reading The Complete Visions of Anne Catherine Emmerich. And we are going to do another amazing day of her visions and what she sees.
And we are on day 4. We're on day 4, and Jeanette explained to me, and the reason why she chose, she named our book club Be Holy for I Am Holy. And she, I suggested other things. She was very like, I think the Holy Spirit was telling her, no, it needed to be named that. And it's in 1 Peter 1:16. And she explained to me the reason why she wanted to read this. I was a little iffy on it, but she said that Blessed Catherine Emmerich goes from the Bible, her visions from the way the book is set up from Genesis all the way to Revelation. And so we're on day 4. So we're at right now, Cain, the children of God, the giants. So that's where we're at. Yes. So who's reading first, Jeanette?
I'll do the short one.
Okay.
And then later on, if it gets too long for you, you can always stop and I'll pick up. But if you want to read it all, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
I saw that Cain conceived on Mount Olivet the design to murder Abel. After the deed, he wandered about the same spot, frightened and distracted, planting trees and tearing them up again. Then I saw a majestic figure in the form of a man, refulgent and light, appear to him. Cain, he said, where is thy brother Abel? Cain did not at first see the figure, but when he did, he turned and answered, I know not. He has not been given in charge to me. But when God replied that Abel's blood cried to him from the earth, Cain grew more troubled, and I saw that he disputed long with God. God told him that he should be cursed upon the earth, and it should bring forth no fruit for him, and that he should forthwith flee from the land in which he then dwelt. Cain responded that everywhere his fellow men would seek to kill him. There were already many people upon the earth. Cain was very old and had children. Abel also left children, and there were other brothers and sisters, the children of Adam. But God replied that it would not be so, that whoever should kill Cain should himself be punished sevenfold. And he placed a sign upon him, that no one should slay him. Cain's posterity gradually became colored. Cham's children also were browner than those of Sem. The nobler races were also of a lighter color. They who were distinguished by a particular mark engendered children of the same stamp. And as corruption increased, the mark also increased, until at last it covered the whole body. And people became darker and darker. But yet in the beginning, there were no people perfectly black. They became so only by degrees. God pointed out to Cain a region to which he should flee, and because Cain said, then wilt thou let me starve? The earth was for him accursed. God answered, no, that he should eat the flesh of animals. He told him likewise that a nation would arise from him, and that God also would come from him. And that good also would come from him. Before this, men ate no flesh. Cain went forth and built a city, which he named after his son, Enoch. Abel was slain in the valley of Josaphat, opposite Mount Calvary. Numerous murders and evil deeds took place there as a subsequent period. Cain slew Abel with a kind of club that he used to break soft stones and earth when planting into the fields. The club must have been of hard stone, for it was shaped like a pickaxe. The handle of wood must have been of hard stone, but it was shaped like a pickaxe. The handle of wood, we must not picture to ourselves the earth before the deluge as it is now. Palestine was by no means so broken up by valleys and ravines. Plains were far more extensive and single mountains less lofty. The Mount of Olives was at that time only a gentle rising. The crib cave of Bethlehem was as later a wild cavern, but the surroundings were different. The people of those early times were larger, though not out of proportion. We would regard them with astonishment, but not with fright, for they were far more beautiful in form than people of the later period. Among the old marble statues that I see in many places lying in subterranean caves may be found of similar figures. Cain led his children and grandchildren to the region pointed out to him, and there they separated. Of Cain himself, I have never seen anything more that was sinful. His punishment appeared to consist in hard but fruitless labor. Nothing in which he was personally engaged succeeded. I saw that he was mocked and reviled by his children and grandchildren, treated badly in every way, and yet they followed him as their leader, though as one accursed. I saw that Cain was severely punished but not damned. One of Cain's descendants was Tubal Cain, the originator of numerous arts and the father of the giants. I have frequently seen that when the angels fell, a certain number had a moment of repentance and did not, in consequence, fall as low as the others. Later on, these fallen spirits took up their abode on a high, desolate, and wholly inaccessible mountain, whose site at the time of the deluge became a sea, the Black Sea. I think they were permitted to exercise their evil influence upon men in proportion as the later strayed further from God. After the deluge, they disappeared from that region and were confined to the air. They will not be cast into hell before the last day. I saw Cain's descendants becoming more and more godless and sensual. They settled further and further up that mountain ridge where were the fallen spirits. These spirits took possession of many of the women, ruled them completely, and taught them all sorts of seductive arts. Their children were very large. They possessed a quickness and aptitude for everything, and they gave themselves up entirely to the wicked spirits as their instruments. And so arose on this mountain a spread far around a wicked race, which by violence and seduction sought to entangle Seth's posterity, likewise in their own corrupt way. Then God declared to Noah his intention to send the deluge. During the building of the ark, Noah had to suffer terribly from those people. I have seen many things connected with the race of giants. They could with ease carry enormous stones high up the mountain, They could accomplish the most stupendous feats. They could walk straight up trees and walls, just as I have seen others possessed by the devil doing. They could effect the most wonderful things. They could do whatever they wished, but all was pure jugglery and delusion due to the agency of the demon. It is for that reason that I have such horror of every species of jugglery and fortune telling. These people could form all kinds of images out of stone and metal, but of the knowledge of God they had no longer a trace. They sought their gods in the creatures around them. I have seen them scratch up a stone, form it into an extravagant image, and then adore it. They worshipped also a frightful animal and all kinds of ignoble things. They knew all things. They could see all things. They were skilled in the preparing of potions, of poisons, poisons. They were skilled in the preparing of poison. They practiced sorcery and every species of wickedness. The women invented music. I saw them going around among the better tribes trying to seduce them to their own abomination. They had no dwelling horses, no cities, but they raised massive round towers of shining stone. Under those towers were little structures leading into great caverns wherein they carried on their horrible wickedness. From the roofs of these structures, the surrounding country couldn't be seen. And by mounting up into the towers and looking through tubes, one could see far into the distance. But it was not like looking through tubes made to bring distant objects into view. The power of the tubes to which I here allude was affected by satanic agency. They that looked through them could see where the other tribes were settled. Then they marched against them, overcame them, and lawlessly carried all before them. That same spirit of lawlessness they exercised everywhere. I saw them sacrificing children by burying them alive in the earth. Oh, God overthrew that mountain at the time of the deluge. Enoch, Noah's ancestor, opposed that wicked race by his teaching. He wrote much. Enoch was a very good man and one very grateful to God in many parts of the open fields. He raised altars of stone, and there the fruits of the earth flourished. He gave thanks to God and offered sacrifices to him. Chiefly in his family was religion preserved and handed down to Noah. Enoch was taken up to paradise. There he waits at the entrance gate, whence with another he will come again before the last day. Cham's descendants likewise had similar relations with the evil spirits after the deluge, and from such connection sprang so many demoniacs and necromancers, so many mighty ones of the world, so many great, wild, daring men. Semiramis herself was the offspring of demoniacs.
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 I don't know how to say it either, but I know it's demon.
I've never heard these words before.
Demoniacs.
Demoniacs.
Yeah.
Okay.
I only know it from Father Ripperger. Demoniacs.
Okay. Yeah. Demoniacs.
That's what it is.
Consequently, she was apt at everything save the working out of her salvation. Later on, there arose another people esteemed as gods by the heathens. The women that first allowed themselves to be ruled by evil spirits were fully conscious of the fact, though others were ignorant of it. These women had it in them like flesh and blood, like original sin. Wow, that's horrible.
I know. That's why this is a little bit hard to read. Because
Yeah,
it's like, okay.
it'll get better.
Yeah. No, yeah, it really does get better. Jeanette, some of the things that are coming up, you're gonna love them. Noah and his posterity, home and Demoschid, leaders of the people. I saw Noah, a simple-hearted man, clothed in a long white garment. He was walking about in an orchard and pruning the trees with a crooked bone knife. A cloud hovered over him, and in it was a human figure. Noah fell on his knees. I saw that he was then and there interiorly instructed upon God's design to destroy mankind, and he was commanded to build an ark. I saw that Noah grew sad, so it's Noah. Noah grew sad at the announcement, and he prayed for the punishment to be averted. He
Oh,
did
that's
not,
Noah.
yeah, all
Why
this
is why
time.
is why is he calling him no?
It's the same thing that she was calling that other person. What
So
was it?
no is Noah.
Remember Elisha and Elijah? We didn't
Okay.
know. Yeah, so now we know it's Noah. So I saw that Noah grew sad at the announcement and that he prayed for the punishment to be averted. He did not begin the work at once. He was in denial. Again, the Lord appeared to him twice in succession, commanding him to begin the building. Otherwise, he should perish with the rest of mankind. At last, I saw Noah removing all of his family to the country in which the Zoroaster, the shining star, subsequently dwelt. Noah settled in a high, woody, solitary region where he and his numerous followers lived under tents. Here he raised an altar and offered sacrifice to the Lord. Neither Noah nor any of his family built permanent houses because they put faith in the prophecy of the deluge. But the godless nations around laid massive foundations, marked off courts, and erected all kinds of buildings designed.
Sorry, one question. Deluge, what is that?
I know the
Is that the
pronunciation. I
because
know
I kept saying it and I didn't know what it was.
I
Deluge,
know
is
the
that like
pronunciation, but I forget what it means. Hold
I'm
on. Let's
thinking destruction, maybe it
deluge
was.
meaning. Okay. It means a severe flood,
Oh, so
indicating
the
a great.
deluge meaning the flood to come.
It says also it inundated with a great quantity of something. He has been deluged with offers of work, but it actually means the noun. That's the verb. He has been deluged, but the noun means a severe flood.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So, but the godless nations around laid massive foundations, marked off courts, and erected all kinds of buildings designed to resist the inroads of times and the attacks of an enemy. There were frightful deeds upon the earth in those days. Men delivered themselves up to all kinds of wickedness, even the most unnatural. They plundered one another and carried off whatever suited them best. They laid waste homes and fields. They kidnapped women and maidens. In proportion to their increases in numbers was the wickedness of Noah's posterity. They even robbed and insulted Noah himself. They had not fallen into the state of base degradation from want of civilization. They were not wild and barbarous. Rather, they lived commodiously and had well-ordered households, but they were deeply imbued with wickedness. They practiced, it sounds like a lot of today's people, they practiced the most shameful idolatry, everyone making his own god of whatever pleased him best. It certainly sounds like today. By diabolical arts, they sought to seduce Noah's immediate family. Mosach, the son of Japhet and the grandson of Noah, was thus corrupted after he had while working in the field, taken from them a poisonous beverage which intoxicated him. It was not wine, but the juice of a plant which they were accustomed to drink in small quantities during their work, and those leaves and fruit they chewed. Masach became the father of a son who was named Ham. When the child was born, Masach begged his brother Thubal to take it and thus hide his guilt. Thubal did so out of fraternal affection. The child, with the stalks and sprouts of certain vicious root, was laid by his mother before Thubal's tent. She hoped thereby to acquire a right over his inheritance. But the deluge was already at hand, and so her plans were fruitless. Thubal took the boy and had him reared in his family without betraying his origin. And so it happened in this way the child was taken into the ark. Thubal called the boy Ham, the name of the root whose sprouts lay near him as the only sign. The child was not nourished with milk, but with the same root. If that plant is allowed to grow up straight, it will reach the height of a man. But when creeping along the ground, it sends up shoots like the asparagus, hard with tender tops. It is used as food and as a substitute for milk. The root is bulbous, and from it rises a crown of a few brown leaves. Its stem is tolerably thick, and the pith or pith is used as meal, cooked like pap or spread in thin layers and baked wherever it thrives. It grows luxuriantly and covers leagues of ground. I saw it in the ark. It was long before the ark was completed, for Noah often discounted it for years at a time. 3 times did God warn him to proceed with it. Each time Noah would engage workmen, recommence, and again discontinue and hope that God would relent. But at the last, the work was finished. I saw that in the ark, as in the cross, there were 4 kinds of wood: palm, olive,
Oh,
cedar, and cypress, right? I
wow. Okay.
Yeah, I saw the wood felled and hewed upon the spot, and Noah bearing it himself upon his shoulders to the place of building, just as Jesus afterward carried the wood of his cross. The spot chosen for the construction of the ark was a hill surrounded by a valley. First, the bottom was put in. The ark was rounded in the back, and the keel, shaped like a trough, was smeared with pitch. It had 2 stories supported on hollow posts, which stood one above another. These posts were not round trunks of trees. They were in oval sections filled with a white pith or pith, which became fibrous toward the center. The trunk was knotty or furrowed, and the great leaves grew around it without branches. I saw the workmen punching the pith or pith out with a tool. All other trees were cut into thin planks. When Noah had carried all the materials to the appointed spot and arranged them in order, the building was begun. The bottom was put in and pitched, the first row of posts raised, and the holes in which they stood filled up with pitch. They came Then came the second floor with another row of posts for the third floor, and then the roof. The spaces between these posts were filled in with brown and yellow laths placed crosswise, the holes and chinks being stuffed with a kind of wool found on certain trees and plants, and a white moss that grows very abundantly around some trees. Then all was pitched inside and outside. The roof was rounded. The entrance between the 2 windows was in the center of one side. A little more than halfway up, in the middle of the roof likewise, was a square aperture. While the ark had been entirely covered with pitch, it shone like a mirror in the sun. Noah went on working alone and for a long time at different compartments for all the animals, as all were to be separate. 2 passages extended through the middle of the ark, and back in the oval part, concealed by hangings, stood a wooden altar, a table of which was semicircular. A little in the front of the altar was a pan of coals. This was their fire. Right and left were spaces partitioned off for sleeping apartments. All kinds of chests and utensils were carried into the ark, and numerous seeds, plants, and shrubs were put into earth around the walls, which were soon covered with verdure. I saw something like vines carried in and on them large yellow grapes, the bunches as long as one's arm. No words can express what Noah endured from the malice and ill will of the workmen during the whole time the ark was building. They mocked him, they insulted him. In every way, they called him a fool. He paid them well in cattle, but that did not prevent their reviling him. No one knew why he was building the ark, therefore, did they ridicule him. When all was finished, I saw Noah give thanks to God, who then appeared to him. He told him to take a reed pipe and call all the animals from the four corners of the globe. The nearer the day of chastisement approached, the darker grew the heavens. Frightful anxiety took possession of the whole earth. The sun no longer showed his face, and the roar of thunder was unceasingly heard. I saw Noah going a dark distance north, south, east, west, and blowing upon his reed pipe. The sun no longer showed his face. It's almost like they're saying the sun is God.
Oh,
That,
yeah.
right?
Wow. Yeah.
The animals came flocking at the sound, and entered the ark in order, two by two, male and female. They went in by a plank laid from the entrance to the ground. When all were safe inside, the plank also was hoisted in. The largest animals, white elephants and camels, went in first. They were restless at the approach of the storm, and it took several days for them all to enter. The birds flew in through the skylight and perched under the roof on poles and in cages, while the waterfowl went into the bottom of the vessel. The land animals were in the middle story, of which were as such are slaughtered. There are 7 couples. The ark laying there by itself on the top of the hill shone with a bluish light. At a distance, it looked as if it were descending from the clouds. And now the time for the deluge drew nigh. Noah had already announced it to his family. He took with him into the ark Sem, Cham, Japhet, and their wives and their children. There were in the ark grandsons from 50 to 80 years old, with their children, large and small, all that they had labored at its construction, and who were good and free from idolatry, entered with Noah. There were over 100 people in the ark, and they were necessary to give daily food to the animals and clean after them. I must say, for I always see it so, that Sem's, Cham's, and Japhet's children all went into the ark. There were many little boys and girls in it. In fact, all of Noah's family that were good. Holy Scripture only mentions 3 of Adam's children, Cain, Abel, and Seth. And yet I see many others among them, and I always see them in pairs, boys and girls. And so too in 20 to the 3rd power, I think. Only 8 souls are mentioned as saved in one ark, viz., the 4 ancestral couples by whom, after the deluge, the earth was to be peopled. I'll have to ask my grandson, the one that's going for engineering, what this number is, 3:20. It doesn't make sense. Maybe it's a mathematical number. I can ask him. I also saw Ham in the dark. The child was fastened by a skin into the bark cradle, formed like a trough. I saw many infants cradled in a similar way, floating on the waters of the deluge. When the ark rose on the waters, when crowds of people upon the surrounding mountains and in high trees were weeping and lamenting, when the waters were covered with the floating bodies of the drowned, and with uprooted trees. Noah and his family were already safe inside. Before he and his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives entered the ark, he once more implored God's mercy. When all had entered, Noah drew in the plank and made fast the door. He left outside near relatives and their families who, during the building of the ark, had separated from him. Then burst forth a fearful tempest. The lightning played in fiery columns. The rains fell in torrents, and the hill upon which the ark stood became an island. The misery was great, so great that I trust it was the means of many souls' salvation. Now I'm wondering, why didn't all the people gather up at the highest point? Like that's what you would do to outrun a flood, and then try to jump on his boat. Like I wonder that, the ark,
I don't know. Maybe they were prevented.
That's what I'm wondering. I saw like a supernatural way they were maybe
Maybe
prevented.
maybe the ark was protected around it, that they weren't able
Maybe
to do
maybe
that.
God made it invisible to them. I saw
Oh.
a devil because he can do that. God can make things.
Isaiah 55:8-9, girl. His ways
Yep.
are higher than our ways. We have no way.
No, but it's true because he
Yeah.
actually he does talk about that in different areas. I saw a devil black and hideous with pointed jaws and a long tail going to and fro through the tempest and tempting men to despair. Toads and serpents sought a hiding place in the crevices of the ark. Flies and vermin I saw not. They came into existence later to torture men. I always wonder why God made these torturous little insects. Now I get it. I saw Noah. He did it. They were made to torment men. The little devils made them. I saw Noah offer sacrifice in the ark upon an altar covered with red, over which was a white cloth. In an arched chest were preserved the bones of Adam. During prayer and sacrifice, Noah laid them on the altar. I saw on the altar likewise the chalice of the Last Supper, which during the building of the ark had been brought to Noah by 3 figures in long white garments. Hmm.
But the Last Supper didn't happen yet.
I know, but but like you said, she projects
Yeah.
forward to kind of explain things,
Or
like you
else
said the other day.
maybe that was there all along. That chalice was there all along, and then it just showed up when the Last Supper came about.
Oh, you're saying
That
I
maybe it
saw
was.
on the altar likewise the chalice of the Last Supper. I think she's just referring to a chalice. I don't think she's
Oh,
referring
okay.
to the
Okay.
exact chalice.
Okay.
They look like the 3 men that announced to Abraham the birth of a son. They came, I think she's just like the other day you said she's drawing
Yeah, she's
parallels.
just,
I
yeah.
think she's drawing a parallel. They saw like the 3 men that announced to Abraham the birth of a son. That was what I was going to say when we first introduced you, just reminded me. When you um when these things are said, she is creating like the Bible with the Old Testament and New Testament, the parallels. And what she knows things that they, when they checked out her visions, they checked to make sure she was in bed sick. She did not know these things. These visions came to her, and when they were checking out her writings, they were checking the details that they were correct historically, and they were. And I guess that's why these were approved. So, you know, that part, that those parts I don't fully understand, but I did understand that they checked out everything and were historically correct from her webpage. So
Yes. Okay.
they they came from a city that was destroyed at the time of the deluge. They addressed Noah as one whose fame had reached them, and told him that he should take with him into the ark a mysterious something that they gave him, in order that it might escape the waters of the deluge. Ooh. The mysterious thing was that chalice. In it lay a grain of wheat, large as a sunflower seed and a vine branch. Noah stuck both in a yellow apple and put it into the chalice. The chalice had no cover, for the branch was to grow out of it. After the dispersion of men at the building of the Tower of Babel, I saw
The
that
branch of
chalice.
Jesse?
You were right.
The branch of Jesse,
They
that was
mean the actual chalice. They mean they didn't mean just that one like it. You were right. In the possession of Sem's descendants in the country of Semiramis. So let me just read that last one. After the dispersion of men at the building of the Tower of Babel, I saw that chalice in possession of one of Sem's descendants in the country of Semiramis. He was the ancestor of the Seminenses, who were established at Canaan by Melchizedek. Hither they took the chalice. Wow, so you were right. I saw the ark driving over waters and dead bodies floating around. That's what I was thinking. There had to be like billions and billions, you know. It rested upon a high rocky peak of a mountain chained far to the east of Syria, and there it remained for a long time. I saw that land was already appearing. It looked like mud covered with greenish mold. Immediately after the deluge, fish and shellfish began to be eaten. Afterward, as people multiplied, they ate bread and birds. They planted gardens, and the soil was so fruit. Oh, I thought she was going to tell us how they got off the ark. They planted gardens, and the soil was so fruitful that the wheat which they sowed produced ears as large as those of maize. The root from which Ham received his name was also planted. Noah's tent stood on the spot where at a later period was that of Abraham. In the plain and in surrounding country, Noah's sons had their tents. I saw the,
wow.
yeah, isn't that amazing? I saw the cursing of like I look at the streets that my ancestors, when I looked at my ancestry, I looked at the streets that they lived on and I thought, oh, I've been on that street. Little did I know that my great great
Wow.
grandparents reminds me of that ancestry
.com.
commercial,
Yeah.
that commercial where they come out and you see these people, it brings them alive. That's what this is doing. And like Jeff Caven said, this isn't just a story of mankind, this is our story. As
Yes.
Christians, we are God's children. It's just so amazing. I
Yes.
saw the cursing of Cham, but Sem and Japhet received from Noah on their knees the blessing. So Cham was the cursed. It was delivered to them with ceremonies similar to those used by Abraham when giving over the blessing to Isaac. I saw the curse pronounced by Noah. Well, see, can I just stop real quick here? You see, there are evil coming from way back. There are evil coming from way back. And we have family curses on us considering the sins of our ancestors. That's why my mother, I have a certificate. That's why it's important to do one of those family blessings. The priests come around to the parishes and you write your family's names on it so you will be released from those curses. And I will tell you, I'm not going to tell you some of the personal details of my family, but I will tell you that after my mother did that, I noticed a lift of oppression in some areas. And I noticed that some of the repeats of our ancestors did not carry forth from my mom's and my generation. Some of them did, but I can see them going down like they have not been repeated, like addiction has not been repeated in my children. There's no alcohol or drugs. I kept them away from that and I prayed about it so strongly. So, and then there's another sin, I won't get into that eradicated itself from my mother's generation of the children. So I think those family prayers when you go. They have them. Look in your you could actually probably look online. I'll try to find one. There's usually a traveling priest, and he goes around from parish to parish, and they give a certificate. You go to his mass, and then he comes around and he does a special blessing so that it will help to take away the family curses that are on you. If you look at Chem here, I bet a lot of the bad people we have today came from him. Okay, so it was delivered to them with ceremonies similar to those used by Abraham when giving the same blessing to Isaac. I saw the curse pronounced by Noah upon Cham move toward the ladder like a black cloud and obscuring him. His skin lost its whiteness. He grew darker. His skin was the sin of sacrilege. His sin, not his skin. His sin was the sin of sacrilege, the sin of one who would forcibly enter the Ark of the Covenant. I saw a most corrupt race descend from Cham and sink deeper and deeper in darkness. And we don't know which one we came from. So that's why this family curse being removed is very important. And I'll try to find something on that for everybody. I see that the black, idolatrous, stupid nations are the descendants of Cham. Their color is due, not of the rays of the sun, but to the dark source whence those degraded races sprang. It would be impossible for me to say how I beheld the nations increasing and extending, and in many ways falling into darkness and corruption. And before people say, oh, this is being racist, this is not, because we all have a little bit of African American in us. We all came from that continent originally, or whatever that they found out. So, and I even have in my ancestry, I have like 2% black. So one of my like bunches of
No, but it
ancestors.
has nothing to do with that.
Right,
It's
but it could sound like
absolutely.
that. It could sound like that to some people. That's why I want them to
think so.
know. Well, yeah, but it does to some people. You know, I'm sensitive to that because of that. So I want people to know that's not what it is here. All of us come from these people. So we don't know if we're one. That's why I'm talking about this blessing from the priest. Believe me, and the sin in my family from way, way back could have very well been. But with all that, many luminous rays streamed forth from them and sought the light. When Thubal, the son of Japhat, with his own children and those of his brother Mosach, sought counsel of Noah as to the country to which they should migrate. There were 15 families in number. Noah's children already extended far around, and the families of Thubal and Mosach also dwelt at some distance from Noah. And let me just say this, we are all taken from this earth. We are all born in original sin. So Cham continued with that original sin. When we do the sacraments, when we say we are broken from that family curse, but it can affect us. And what this blessing does is it releases any punishments that are remaining from back then, even though we didn't do the sin. It will take the effects of that away. But we choose if we are in that by taking our sacraments, by living more holy lives, by doing holy habits. So we are all in control of our, well, I mean, God had to give us the grace first, obviously, but we are in control as if we sin and if we give in to temptation like Cham did, his sacrilege. But when Noah's children began to quarrel and oppress one another, Thubal desired to remove still further off. He wanted to have nothing to do with Cham's descendants, who were already thinking of building the tower. He and his family heeded not the invitation received later to engage in the undertaking, and I was declined also by the children of Sem. Thubal, with his troop of followers, appeared before Noah's tent, asking for directions as to whither he should go. Noah dwelt upon a mountain range between Libanus and Caucasus. He wept when he saw Thubal and his followers, for he had loved that race, because it was better, more God-fearing than the others. If you know that we are mispronouncing like a country or something, please put it in with the pronunciation in the comments so that we can at least try to correct ourselves
Yeah.
with that.
Yes.
I am not, Jeanette's not either. When we correct each other, we're not sensitive to that. So please
Oh
don't be
no.
afraid to
No,
tell
no,
us,
no.
and hopefully we
Oh
see it.
no.
So yeah,
No.
he pointed out a region toward the northeast, charged them to be faithful to the commands of God and to the offspring of sacrifice, and made them promise to guard purity of their descent and not to intermingle with the descendants of Cham. Um, I just want to say one more thing. If you're not willing to take criticism, you can't grow. And Jeanette and I are trying very hard to grow in holiness. So
Yes.
we often correct each other. If you saw us in public, you'd think we were sisters from another mother. How's that go? Mothers from another mother. Well, sis
Yeah.
is from another mother. So we are fine with corrections. If you
Yeah.
find something that we are getting off, don't be shy. We are not sensitive to criticism because we're trying to grow, especially in
Yeah.
holiness.
In holiness. Yes.
Yeah. He gave them girdles and breast pieces that he had in the ark. The heads of the families were to wear them when engaged in the divine service and performing marriage ceremonies, in order to guard against malediction and a depraved posterity. The ceremonies used by Noah when offering sacrifice reminded me of the holy sacrifice of the Mass. There were alternate prayers and responses, and Noah moved from place to place at the altar and bowed reverently. He gave them likewise a leathern bag containing a vessel made of bark, in which was an oval golden box enclosed three smaller vessels. They also received from him the roots or bulbs from that home plant, rolls of bark or skins upon which were written characters, and round wooden blocks upon which signs were engraved. I'm dying to know what this plant is. These people were of a bright reddish yellow complexion. I wonder if she reveals it. And very beautiful. They were clothed in skins and wooden garments. Sorry, I have to get comfortable because I'm
We
as I'm
got 2,000 pages. I'm sure she
yeah.
does at some point.
Yeah,
She goes
sorry.
back and forth in her visions of what
Yeah,
she sees, though.
okay. Girded at the waist, the arms alone bare. Let me move this so that it can support me. I'm kind of trying to get comfortable any way I can. Guard, all right, sorry. They were clothed in skins and woolen garments girded at the waist, the arms alone bare. The skins they wore were scarcely drawn from the animal when they were clapped, still bloody on the limbs. Oh, they fitted so tightly that my first thought was, these people are hairy. Not so. However, for their own skin was smooth as satin. No, I don't like this part. With the exception of various kinds of seed, they did not take much baggage with them, since they were departing for a high region toward the northeast. I saw no camels, but they had horses, asses, and animals with spreading horns like stags. I saw them, Thubal's followers, on a high mountain, where they dwelt one above another in a long, low huts like arbors. I saw them digging the ground, planting and setting out trees in rows. The opposite side of the mountain was cold. Later on, the whole region became much colder. In consequence of this change in the climate, one of the grandsons of Thubal, the ancestor Demschid, led them further toward the southwest. With a few exceptions, all who had seen Noah and had taken leave of him died in his place, that is, on the mountain to which Thubal had led them. They who followed Demschid were all born on the same mountain. mountain. They took with them the few surviving old men who had known Noah, carrying them very carefully in litters. Can I just stop here and say, you know, when the continents all spread apart, so we don't know if some of these things are even still, like, these lands aren't underwater for all we know, you know. So we, you know, she may not reveal where they are, but they may not still be in existence today. These were thousands of years before Christ was even born. So we don't know how the landscape has you know, they say this the South Florida is all gonna, I'm like, I hope my daughter and her uh friends move up further up here by the time that happens, because supposedly it's all gonna, the South Florida is all gonna sink. And I'm like, I hope she's not there when that happens. I hope she doesn't want to ever
Are
move
we in
back.
South Florida?
No, my daughter's in South Florida. She's
Oh,
in Delray Beach, but she doesn't ever want to move back up here. She doesn't like it up here. You know, I raised her down there. That's home to her. You know, we're not home to her. That is the land instead of the people. I'm like, I did something wrong there. But she loves us and she wants us to see us all the time, but she wants us to all to move down there. I said, not happening. Anyway. All right. So with Thubal, with his family separated from Noah, I saw among them that child of Mosach, Ham, who had gone with Thubal into the ark. Ham, who was already grown, and later on, I saw him very different from those around him. He was of large stature, like a giant, and of a very serious, particular turn of mind. Is it peculiar? Peculiar turn of mind. He wore a long robe where he was like a priest. He used to go alone to the summit of the mountain and there spend night after night. He observed the stars and practiced magic. He was taught by the devil to arrange what he saw in vision into a science, a religion. There you go, witchcraft. And thereby he uh, vitiated, vitiated and counteracted the teaching of Enoch. The evil inclinations inherited from his mother mingled in him with the pure hereditary teachings of Enoch and Noah, to which the children of Thubal clung. Ham, by his false visions and revel. Now, isn't he the son that accidentally got onto the ark by? So he's that son that she was talking about, Ham, right? He's
I
the
don't
one where
know.
they took the baby and they, I think he is, from see, it's hard to follow this. This is what make these, I'll go back and look tomorrow later if I can find it. It's like so much. It's like Ham, by his false visions and revelations, misinterpreted and they have to be from the Democrats, the liberals. They misinterpreted and changed the ancient truth. He studied and pondered, watched the stars, and had visions which by Satan's agency showed them deformed images of truth. Okay, this is where I'm just going to stop and say one more thing. When we are doing sin, we are blinded and we can't see truth. Just like that's what makes, you know, that's why there is there when we sin, it cuts us off from God. So we can't see truth. We can't determine. So if you meet someone and they won't accept truth, you know, whether it's liberals or whatever, they think, well, they're all different images of there are more genders. In their mind, they can't see truth. You know, they're blinded. You know that they're blinded by their sin. We can't change them, but we can offer them and we can pray for them. We
Yeah.
mock these people and we laugh at them, but we really need to be praying for them.
Yes.
The
Yes.
holiness, to be holy, we should not be laughing at them. I can't help it, God forgive me, but it really is wrong, and we really should be
Yeah. Yeah.
praying for them. And sometimes you just need to say something funny to make yourself feel better because you're so frustrated by them. But that's a weakness in us. The holy part of us should know to be praying for people who are doing
Yes.
that can't see truth. Okay.
Amen. Amen.
Through their resemblance to truth, his doctrine and idolatry became the mothers of heresy. Thubal was a good man. Ham's manner of acting and his teaching were very displeasing to Thubal, who was greatly grieved to see one of his sons, the father of Demschid, attach himself to Ham. I heard Thubal complaining, "My children are not united. Would that I had not separated from Noah." Ham conducted the waters of two springs from the higher part of the mountain down to dwellings. They soon united into one stream, which after a short course swelled into a broad torrent. How do you say that? Torrent, like the water. Torrent.
Torrent,
Torrent.
current.
No. Torrent. T-O-R. It's torrent, I think. Because I know it because I've read this word many times, but I don't really know the torrent of the water. I saw Demschid and his followers crossing it at their departure. Ham received almost divine homage from his followers. He taught them that God existed in fire. He had also much to do with water and with that viscous root from which he derived his name. He planted it and solemnly distributed it as a sacred medicine and nourishment. This distribution at last became a ceremony of religion. I think this is the roots of Satanism. He carried its juice or pap around with him in a brown vessel like a mortar. The axes were of the same material. They got them from people or another tribe that lived far away in a mountainous country and forged such implements by means of fire. I saw them on a mountain from which fire burst forth, sometime in one place, sometimes in another. I think the vessel which Ham carried around with him was made of melted metal or rock that flowed from the mountain, which was caught in a mold. Okay, here's another thing. I wonder, you know how I forget what year it was, but I know one of my ancestors died of it, of a poisoning. He made himself a special drinking thing and he didn't know, but he ended up dying because back then they didn't know about metals that were poisonous.
Oh
So
yeah.
so this guy is maybe causing brain damage in himself. Do you see what she's saying? He carried with him out of melted metal or rock that flowed from the mountain. It might be a poisonous that's making him think deliriously that set down the roots, the
And
poison
also,
set down the
like,
roots of Satan.
also when they brought that weird plant into Noah's ark, and they were like getting high off this plant thing, and
Right,
you're thinking, well, that's drugs today,
right.
so all that, it was way back then with different names, different ways, but we have it now. So when people say, oh my gosh, this world has never been this bad, yeah, it has. Read
Right.
the
And
Old
see,
Testament.
God made that stuff for us to make medicine, and people are
Yes,
abusing it. They're
yes,
abusing
yes.
it in the wrong way, but they didn't realize that knowing all them. But now we know that's abusing something that God gave us.
Yeah.
God made this earth, so he allowed that. Okay. So which Ham carried around with him, made of melted metal or rock that flowed from a mountain, which was caught in a mold. You see, a mold. Mold is where a lot of poison come from. Ham was never married, nor did he live to be very old. He published many of his visions referring to his own death. He himself put faith in them, as did also Durkhedo and his other followers at a later period. But I saw him dying a frightful death, and the evil one carried him off, body and soul.
Ew.
Nothing remained of him. Ugh. For that reason, his followers thought that, like Henoch, he had been taken up into a holy dwelling place. The father of Demschid had a pupil of Ham, and Ham left him his spirit in order that he might then be the one who would succeed him. Ugh. On account of his knowledge, maybe that's what Elisha was saying to Elijah, like, but we can't take someone's spirit. That God gives us each an individual
No,
soul.
no. I think Alicia meant he wanted his double blessing, like double,
Yeah.
double what he did good in this world. He wanted to double that. He wanted to be able
Okay.
to double it. Like, yeah, he
Okay.
was doing it.
Okay. On account of his knowledge, Demchid became the leader of his people. They soon became a nation and were led by Demchid still further south. Demchid was very distinguished. He was well educated and had embraced Ham's teaching. He was unspeakably lively and vigorous, much more active and better also than Ham, who was of a dark, rigid disposition. He practiced the religion formulated by Ham, added many things of his own thereto, and gave much attention to the stars. His followers regarded fire as sacred. They were all distinguished by a certain sign which denoted their race. People at the time together in tribes, they did not intermingle then as now. Demschid's special aid was to improve the races and maintain them in their original purity. He separated and transplanted them as seemed best to him. He left them perfectly free, and yet they were very submissive to him. The descendants of those races whom I now see wild, barbarous at distant lands and islands are not to be compared with their progenitors in point of personal beauty or manly character, for those early nations were noble and simple, yet withal most valiant. The races of the present day are also far less skillful and clever and possess less bodily strength. On these marches, Demschid laid the foundations of tent cities, marked off fields, made long roads of stone, and formed settlements here, there, and certain numbers of men and women, to whom he gave animals, trees, and plants. He rode around large tracts of land, striking into the earth with an instrument which he always carried in his hand, and his people then set to work on these places, grubbing and hacking, making hedges and digging ditches. Demschid was remarkably strict and just. I saw him as a tall old man, very thin and of a yellowish red complexion. He rode a surprisingly nimble little animal with slender legs and black and yellow stripes, very much like an ass. Well, I know a lot of those. Demschid rode around a tract of land just as our poor people go around a field on the heath by night, and thus appropriated it for cultivation. He paused here and there, plunged his grubbing axe into ground, or drove in a stake to mark the sites of future settlements. The instrument, which was afterward called Demschid golden plowshare, was a form like a Latin cross. It was about the length of one's arm, and when drawn out, formed with a shaft a right angle. With this instrument, Demschid made fissures in the earth. A representation of the same appeared on the side of his robe, where pockets generally are. It reminded me of the symbol of the office that Joseph and Etzned always carried in Egypt, and with which they also surveyed the land, though that of Demschid was more like a cross. On the upper part was a ring into which could be run. Demschid wore a mantle that fell backward from the front. From his girdle to the knee hung 4 leathern flaps, 2 behind and 2 before, strapped at the side and fastened under the knee. His feet were bound with leather and straps. He wore a golden shield on his breast. He had several similar breastplates to suit various solemnities. His crown was a pointed circlet of gold. The point in front was higher and bent like a little horn, and on the other end of it waved something like a little flag. Demschid constantly spoke of Henoch. He knew that he had been taken away from the earth. He knew that he had been taken away from the earth without undergoing death. He taught that Henoch had delivered over to Noah all goodness and all truth, had appointed him the father and guardian of all blessings. And from that Noah, all these blessings had passed over to himself. He wore about him a golden egg-shaped vessel in which he which, as he said, was contained something precious that had been preserved by Noah in the ark, which had been handed down to himself. Wonder what it is. Wherever he pitched his tent, there the golden vessel was placed in the column, and over it the elegant post carved with all kinds of figures covering was stretched. Maybe it's the chalice. It looked with like a little temple. The chalice that all these secular movies are trying to find. What do they call it?
Yeah.
What do they
The
call that?
Holy
The
Grail.
Holy Grail. The cover of the vessel was a crown of filigree work. When Demsched lighted fire, he threw it into something that he took out of the vessel. The vessel had indeed been used in the ark, for Noah had preserved the fire in it, but it was now the treasured idol of Demsched and his people. When it was set up, fire burned before it, which prayers were offered in animal sacrifice. For Demsched taught that the great God dwells in fire and light, and that he has many inferior gods and spirits serving him. Ew. All submitted to the Demschid. His established colonies of men and women here and there gave them herds and permitted them to plant and build. They were not allowed to follow their own pleasure in the matter of marriage, for Demsched treated them like cattle, assigning wives to his followers. Sounds like a cult, in accordance with his own views. The first cult, he himself had several. One was the very beautiful and of a better family than others. Demschid destined his son by her to be his successor. By his order, great round towers were built, which were ascended by steps for the purpose of observing the stars. The women lived apart and in subjection. They wore short garments, the bodice and breast of material like leather, and some kind of stuff hung behind. Around the letter and around the neck and over the shoulders, they wore a full circular cloak which fell below the knee. On the shoulders and breast, it was ornamented with signs or letters. From every country that he settled, Demschid caused straight roads to be made in the direction of Babel. Demschid always led his people to uninhabited regions where there were no nations to expel. He marched everywhere with perfect freedom, for he was only a founder, a settler. His race was of a bright reddish yellow complexion like ochre. His very handsome people, all were
Did
marked.
you, sorry, just one question. I kind of lost, my mind went on who Dempster was. Who was he again?
So did I, and that's what I was going to look up when
Okay, Dempster. First, I want to know, is he good, bad? And then I want to know, where did he come from?
it has something to do with harm and that bad thing. So I think what we need to do after
So he was bad. So all this that he's talking about is all bad.
it seems like it. It seems like it, but let's sometimes in a story we don't know the full meaning in the beginning, you know. So
Okay.
let's leave ourselves open to it. We can look back at the roots of it. I think it's bad, but I'm not positive, so don't quote me on that. Well, you could,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I could be wrong. Every now
Okay.
and then I am wrong,
Me too.
but I admit it. Um, Okay, they were all marked in order to distinguish the pure from those of mixed descent. Hemschid marched over a high mountain covered with ice. I do not remember how he succeeded in crossing, but many of his followers perished. They had horses or asses. Demschid rode on a little striped animal. Sounds like a zebra.
Zebra.
A change of climate had driven them from their country. It became too cold for them. It is warmer there now. Occasionally he met on his march a helpless tribe, either escaping from the tyranny of their chief or awaiting in distress the advent of some leader. They willingly submitted to Demschid, for he was gentle. Okay, so he might be the good one. Ham was the bad one. See, that's why I'm saying, look how it changes. Occasionally he met a march of a helpless tribe, either escaping from tyranny of their chief or awaiting in distress the advent of some leader. They willingly submitted to Demschid, for he was gentle and he brought them grain and blessings. But remember, the devil can come looking like a little girl, so you
Yeah,
got to be careful.
I'm a little confused with him, so I'm looking
So am
forward to
I.
looking him up.
Yeah. They were destitute exiles who, like Job, had been plundered and banished. I saw some poor people who had no fire and were obliged to bake their bread on hot stones in the sun. When Demshed gave them fire, they looked upon him as a god. He fell in with another tribe that sacrificed children who were deformed or who did not reach their standard of beauty.
He's bad.
Evil. That's just like abortion. We know the Dems are bad because they kill babies.
Yeah, but he sounded nice for a little bit there.
So the devil knows how to look pretty, remember. The little ones were buried up to the waist and fire kindled around them.
Oh my gosh.
Dems should abolish this custom. Oh, he abolished it. He delivered many poor children whom he placed in a tent and confided to the care of some women. Confided to the care of some women. He afterward made use of them here and there as servants. He was very careful to keep the genealogical line pure. See, he's still talking, he's still acting like a Hitler. No, shh. Demschid first marched in a southwesternly direction, keeping the Prophet Mountain to the south of his left. Then he turned to the south, the mountain still on his left, but to the east. I think he afterward crossed the Caucasus. At that period, when those regions were swarming with human beings, when all was life and activity, our countries were but forests, wilderness, and marshes. Only off toward the east might be met a small wandering tribe. The shining star Zoroaster, who lived long after, was descended from Demschid's son, whose teaching he revived. Demschid wrote all kinds of laws on bark and tables of stone. One long letter often stood for a whole sentence. Their language was as yet the primitive one, to which ours still bears some resemblance. Demschid lived just prior to Derkito and their daughter, the mother of Semiramis. He did not go to Babel himself, though his career ran in that direction. Thank God, two more pages.
Why is she talking so much about this man?
I don't know. We're going to find out. I know. I know. We got to find out about this jerk or this nice guy. We don't know yet. I better be careful. The history of Hom and Demschid as Jesus spoke of it before the pagan philosophers. Here we go. I saw the history of Hom and Demschid as Jesus spoke of it before the pagan philosophers at Lenipha in the Isle of Cyprus. These philosophers had in Jesus's presence spoken of Demschid as the most ancient of the wise kings who had come far beyond India with a golden dagger received from God. He had divided off and people, just when you were asking the question, God provided it.
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you.
And peopled many lands and had scattered blessings everywhere. So maybe he isn't bad. They questioned Jesus about him and the various wonders related to him. Jesus responded to their question by saying that Demschid, here's what we can count on, Jesus's word. Jesus responded to their questions by saying that Demschid was by nature a prudent man, a man wise according to flesh and blood. Notice he says according to flesh and blood. We can only be as smart as we are given, so he's not smart like today, but he was smart for those times. So maybe it was worse and maybe he was the good of the bad. that he had been the leader of the nations, that upon the dispersion of men at the building of the Tower of Babel, he had led one race and settled countries according to a certain order, that there had been other leaders of that kind who had indeed led a worse life than he. See what I'm saying? He was not the worst of the
He was
worst.
not great,
Better.
but he wasn't that bad.
Right. He was the better of the worst. Um,
Wow.
yeah. Let a work, well, like we pick politicians, we're not picking ministers. They, like the things about Trump being a cheater and that on his wife, we didn't say he was a preacher. He's the best of the, he's at least trying to give us freedom. He's not trying to walk all over our rights. Anyway, sorry. Uh, because his race had not fallen into such great ignorance as many others. See? But Jesus showed them also what fables had been written about him, and that he was a false side picture. Here we go. A counterfeit type of priest and King Melchizedek. He told them that notice the difference between Jemshid's race and that of Abraham. So you see, he was the best back then, but he was not like Abraham's race that were much better. As the stream of nations moved along, God had sent Melchizedek to the best families to lead and unite them, to prepare for them lands and abiding places, in order that they might preserve themselves unsullied, and in proportion to their degree of worthiness, be found more or less fit to receive the grace of the promise, who Melchizedek was. Jesus left to themselves to determine but of one thing they might be certain. He was an ancient type of the future, but then fast approaching fulfillment of the promise. The sacrifice of the bread and wine which he had offered would be fulfilled and perfected and would continue till the end of time. You see, she's taking us from the mud and the bad and pulling us along with the thread of Abraham, the golden thread of Abraham. So next time we will be starting at the Tower of Babel, because that was a lot.
I told you.
But see, she tied it all up at the end, just when we were like, wait a minute, I'm lost.
What's going on?
Yeah, then she tied it all up nicely, so I feel better. I feel better.
Yeah.
I feel better, and I'm getting this now. I'm getting this. This is making sense.
You're getting her. Yeah, but there's a lot of little tidbits in there that, like, wow, that we didn't know about.
Right. And we'll be able to go back once we get the whole thing done, which will be a long time. We may be doing this for 5 years, Jeanette. This is 2,000 pages.
I think I'm gonna get a little notebook on the side so I can write down
That's a
the
good idea.
pages
Do
and
that.
and as we read, we can write down the questions we have, and then we can write the notes of the main things that stood out to us.
Please do that.
So
Please
that
do
we
that.
can have that. Yeah.
Yeah, and listen, it's going to be a little easier. This is overwhelming now because we're doing the consecration at the same time. When we're done the consecration and we're just doing this, I will not be able to get up at 6 a.m. I'm only doing this for Lent, and I'm going to let it finish into the consecration.
Yes.
Just the consecration, because we're trying to do too much. But after that, we're only going to be doing this, and 8 o'clock is my early time.
Well, then instead of the consecration, I'm gonna get up still, because I always get up at 5:30 no matter what.
Yeah.
And I'll just start going to mass, because they have a 7 o'clock mass at Annunciation.
And
they
then
have
at
a
8 we'll do
7:30 mass at Mary Magdalene, and they have an 8:30 mass at Nativity. There's no excuse for me not going to mass.
Well, there's a 12:15 at Annunciation.
Yes.
But I know you're not big on Annunciation anymore, but I understand. But the point is that I need my sleep at least till 8, because remember, I get up all night long. I get up and down, and I wake up. I remember I have this neck thing. But anyway, so the point is that when we're just doing this, I still want to do the father study and stuff like that. So we'll be trying to
we'll do whatever you want. We'll do whatever you want.
that may take us a while to put together, but as we do it, like maybe we'll only do it once a week and we'll put it all together once a week. Like I'll collect things
Okay,
during the week
sounds
because we
good.
still have other things that we're doing, Jeanette. We're
I know.
doing Jeanette keeps me really busy. I have to set some limit. I have to do boundaries because she has so much more energy. You have more energy than me. And I'm not the audit. When I was a little girl, yeah, when I was a little girl, that's her book, The Boundaries. When I was a little girl, we used to wake up at 7 a.m., me and my brother. But now that I'm older, I need till 8 a.m. And then I'm okay. 8 a.m. is like 6. This is killing me, but I'm doing it for Lent and we're finishing the consecration. I'm going to do it until I finish the consecration because unfortunately we're not going to be done the consecration by the time we're done Lent. But I'm going to continue after for you because for your convenience, because you do so much for me. So, it makes it easier because you do a lot more than I do because I can't,
Well, we don't have to do the consecration that early. We can do it later. We can do it later in the evening or or in the day. I'm home during the day and I'm going to be sewing a lot more. So, I got a gigantic quilt to make for my daughter. So,
well, I'm going to be making one of those squares.
you're going to
You're
be, you're going to be making it right
I'm
alongside.
sorry, but I'm going to help you design things because I want you to do it right.
Yeah.
I want to give instruction to each of the persons. This needs
Yeah.
to be symbol. We need
Yeah.
them to
You're
understand.
going to be the one giving everybody the instructions
I'm
on
going
how
to
to
be the
make the
Maya
square.
Angelou. I'm going to be the Maya Angelou that will, I want it to be symbolic. I want it to be
Well,
special.
guys, the guys don't know what it is we're doing. You got to tell them.
Okay. Okay. My mother, she always could make things really special. My mom, she made things interesting. My mom was fun. I miss that about my mom. She brought me to the guide, but she took me to a movie and it was the one down there on, I think it's 1792. It's like in an old house and you go in it and I loved it. So we went in there and we watched the movie, um, uh, How to Make an American Quilt. And there's some secular stuff in there, I will warn you, but it brings the old and the new together. And she is a girl who is about to get married to a young man, and her mother's like a little crazy and all, and so she taught her the wrong things about marriage and stuff. But her grandmother and her aunt, who is her grandmother's sister, there's a lot of amazing stuff that goes on between it. The drama is amazing and it's so good. But all her life when she was growing up, they were making quilts, and the quilts came from way back when Maya Angelou had been one of their like almost slaves, like they were escaping slavery, and she came in when they were little girls and she stayed with them as a worker that was paid. That's how slavery ramped out of slavery into work, from servant into workers. So she stayed with the family. So they were very, very close knit group of women. And then they had their women in their town because the towns were much smaller then. And so she had all of them making quilts. They had a sewing bee, they called it a sewing bee back then, right, Jeanette? A sewing
Yeah.
bee, a quilting bee. So they would make quilts together and she would sit beneath them, and the movie starts with her remembering as a little girl looking up. She would get underneath and look up. So this was a very, very intimate thing for her. This was her childhood. So she became a woman, and a very educated in a secular way woman. And so she was about to marry this guy, and they were making her a quilt for her wedding. And so each woman took it takes each of the women of the town, and they tell you her particular love story. One woman's a swimmer and she marries this guy and he leaves her, and so she tells you that their love story. Then she has another woman whose husband is an artist and he cheats on her, but she still loves him. And so her little square is the garden that was a different one, the garden that they planted. So she planted. So each of their love story gets put into the symbol that they're trying to pass on their story of love to her.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're like big squares in the quilt, and the big squares. Actually, I have a picture of the quilt. I'll send it to you, and you can add it on. I don't know how you
Post.
do it, but and on the square they like
Well, can you send it
hands.
to me now? I'll pause
Yeah,
it and you can hold
yeah.
up. All right, hold
Okay.
on. We're gonna pause the recording and you can go get it now. Okay, she's gonna hold up the picture. Can you see it? Can everybody see it? Let me move over. Let me move this over so I can see it. I hope everyone can see that. So
Yeah, they
she's
can see
sitting
it.
on it. And it's kind of hard to see, but so Maya Angelou's love story was the one where she left her ancestors left slavery, and so she brought the quilt, and she's the one that taught the sisters how to quilt, because the slaves um had this beautiful quilt, and she brought it with her. So she's the one that's the director of the quilting, and hers has a picture of the bird. You can't is hers you can't see Maya Angelou's one. Maya Angelou's has the picture of the bird because she put in her square her ancestors leaving slavery and how they followed the crow, and then it all ties in at the end of the movie. And I'm going to tell you something, this is such a special movie. There's a little bit of sexual tension too, with the guy that tries to come and lure her away from the husband, the to be her fiance. Yeah, there it is. I don't know which one is Maya Angelou's, but oh, that's a different one.
That's a different example of
It's an
another quilt
example.
that you
Okay.
kind of make stories on the squares and white, and
Right.
then you put them all together and you make a giant quilt for it.
But we're
And she was getting
making,
married, so
okay, so this is what we're doing, guys. We're going to be, yeah, I love that. We're
that's
going to be
another
making one.
example. That's another
Jeanette's
example.
daughter is about to get married, and she asked her mother for a quilt, and Jeanette started making one for her son. I said, she won't appreciate that. She's the one getting married. So I got her to agree to make one for her daughter. And so now it's going to be for her daughter. She'll make one for Junior later for his wedding. But for now, we're all going to, she's going to be collecting all of her daughter's friends and all the women that we know that are in our group, and we're asking them to put a square, and we're going to have to make them understand. We're going to have to make them watch the how to make an American quilt, and then we're going to have to explain symbolism a little bit to them, which I'm putting that part together. And then like mine is going to be, the purpose of marriage is to help each other get into heaven. So mine's going to be, this is my symbol, is going to be steps, and then a couple walking up steps, their back to the you're just going to see the back of the man and the woman walking up steps together into clouds. And then I'm going to put some other symbolism in my square, but I've already started to pull the symbols that I want in my square. So each person, and it has to do with my love story. Even though my love story didn't work out, I still learned and have wisdom from it, and I'm passing that on. And then she's going to make a book. I told her I think we should make a book that will explain each square from each person's love story, and we're going so that we can pass on just like. And so for showers, her daughter works in the sewing studio, and her daughter sews, like that's why she wants a quilt. That's her love, is sewing and texture, like Jeanette and I love
Yeah,
textures and
my daughter
fabrics. That's her
Gabriella
love.
is a
That's her love.
wearable artist, and
A
she's
really, yeah.
an amazing artist. She
Yeah.
paints and she quilts amazingly.
Mm-hmm.
She started
And
sewing when she was, I think,
little,
like 8 or 9 years
so
old,
did I, but I
and
wasn't that
so
as good.
she is better than me at sewing. So that's why I'm
Yeah,
saying
because she
you're
does it all
asking
the time.
you're asking me for a quilt. You know what
Now,
a mess I am.
normally someone like that would go to dressmaking school. But
Yeah.
here's the point. This showers, what we think Jeanette and her should do afterwards is present it to the sewing studio for wedding parties to come in, that they can all make a quilt, and we're going to put the book, and we're going to publish this book afterwards, and we are going, and all the women that are doing this have to know they're going to be published, because we're going to publish this. And then,
We are?
and then yeah. And of course I told you this was my idea, and this is
I
for your
don't
daughter.
remember this part.
Yeah. And so I know, because you don't listen to the whole thing when I talk to you. So anyway, so then we're going to finish it. And then what we're going to do is present it to the sewing studio, that your daughter can run the little program of wedding parties that come in and help them design their quilts, and give them, have them come in and watch the movie, teach them, or maybe they send them home to watch it. I don't know how they're going to want to design their program, but we're going to help them. It will bring the sewing studio as a marketing thing to bring in client, what do they call their clients? Not clients. In nursing we call it clients or patients. What do they call it? Customers. Sorry, I'm losing my words these days. So they'll bring in customers. So this is a marketing thing for them, and this is a way your daughter can use her love of fabrics like we have. Most women like that, like my love for that, I had to go to tailoring school. So I went to tailoring school, and I did not like it. I went for the year and a half and I got my certificate, but I was like, I'm not doing this. So I ended up.
I went to FITM, guys. I went to fashion design.
You went to fashion design. Yeah.
Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in LA on 7th Street, if any of you are from LA.
She's an artist. Yeah. Now, so what I'm trying to say is this is all of our experience culminating into your daughter having maybe a career that she'll love to do. You know, who knows? She might start doing wedding parties herself on the side.
We were just gonna simply let you guys know quickly that we were making a quilt for my daughter's
I wanted them to see the
future
whole
wedding.
You know, I have to give the whole story.
But Henrietta told me the whole thing. I like
a big picture, because it helps people understand. You know me. I got to give the whole picture. I don't like little pieces of the truth. I like the whole truth.
God made us all different for a reason. We complement each other.
Oh yeah, your artistry. That's you. Do you think there's any accident? Jeanette and I, we're from different cultures. We're from different, from so many different things. Well, not totally cultures, but because she's American too. But we have so much. That's why I say with Nat, I have my Jesus in my car. I'm following it, and I sent a picture of my kids. I said,
I found another one.
I said that the luck of having Hispanic friends. Look what I got, and they laughed. They thought it was hilarious. We got
little Jesuses.
Oh, that
we found.
Yeah,
at the five and under store.
You didn't put it up in your dashboard. It has to go on your dashboard.
I bought a couple more I found.
Well, don't you have one on your dashboard?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I bought one for my daughters just in case they wanted one, but they decided not to have one.
Well, I want to put in another Eucharist. Remember I bought you the monstrance. I want to put that in my car. I want to glue it to my front.
Oh yeah.
I want to put that in.
It's right here.
Yeah, I want to put that in where the dials are, you know. I want to put that in there. Yeah. I want to buy another one and put that in my car. I
love it. It's a perfect size. I wanted to make it a pendant and wear it, but I don't think it's appropriate because I'm not
it's okay to.
Sister Angelica, Mother Angelica wears one, and I love her.
Too big.
She's one of my favorite.
Yeah.
And that's why you gave it to me, because she wears it. You can wear it, but
we're allowed. But I'm not either, because it's just too big. But the thing is,
I like the size. I'm Spanish, remember? I love big, but I just don't think it's
car by your dials.
I don't think I'm holy enough to wear it,
Yeah, I understand. I feel funny wearing it too. I couldn't wear it either, but I'm going to put it in my car so that I can look at it while I'm driving.
That's perfect.
Yes. Perfect. So anyway, all right, we're done recording.
We're done.
We don't do a prayer on the end of this one. What do?
We do? I don't remember.
We don't do a prayer.
We
You were
don't.
talking about eventually doing a prayer, but I forget which one it was. That's the problem with us. We do forget stuff. All right. We love you guys. God bless
We
you.
love you all, and continue reading and watching holy things. And little by little, we will become holier. And
That's the
that's the name of our book club
If
is,
you don't have holy people around you, start a movie club at your parish. If you
yeah.
don't have my grandson, I'm working with him getting around holy people. So I'm telling you, you talk to God and ask him, because when I met Jeanette, I had been lonely for the first time in my life because my mom had died. And when I met her, God was pushing me to go, just like he was pushing me to go to this last one with the Case for Jesus. I'm like, why am I driving all
Oh,
the way out
what
here?
a good book.
Now I'm glad I went, so here, yeah, that's our other class. So Jeanette pushes me, but if I hadn't met Jeanette that day, she asked me to come crochet. I'm like, I don't crochet, but I wanted to teach her the rosary because she didn't know how to do it. And I
Yeah.
went, and it wasn't easy to get us to do it at that time, but they didn't want to do it that day. And I said, no, that's the reason I came. So when I got her to do it, Jeanette was like, oh my gosh, we have to do this. And the fire started. And that was the rosary. And what did it do? It changed me. It changed you. It opened us. It changed us. You want to get holy, get around holy people. But the first thing we did was the rosary. So if God had not pushed me to that rosary class, which I can't really work with my hands well. So I don't know, but God kept telling me to go. And I didn't want to meet anybody because I was still in
Yes.
grief. I'm like,
Yes.
I'm not the kind of person that goes out meeting people. Like, this is different. Like, Jeanette changed me. I don't know what she did to me, but she changed me.
We changed each other because you taught me the spiritual warfare rosary,
Yeah.
and I fell in love with it. It's like I went, wow, we
That's,
got to do this. We got
and
to
so
do
she
this
helped me.
live. And we did it. We did it
When
live
you
for what,
find
2 years?
when you find
Yeah.
holy friends, you will inspire them, they will inspire you, and it's a back and forth symbiotic
Yeah.
relationship. What do they call that? Symbiotic, you know what I mean.
Oh.
So find holy friends, go to Catholic adult groups. If you're young, go to the young adult
Go to
group.
YouTube.
Go to
Go to
No,
YouTube.
they need to find holy friends.
Oh, I know that, but they can also watch in YouTube. They have so many podcasts and so many beautiful movies of all the saints. The
But
Padre Pio movie.
But I want
The
them to find real friends and
Oh
start
yeah.
movie groups, because those
Okay.
things are great. Those are holy habits. But the other holy habit, you need holy people in your life. You need to draw them in. Go to groups. Like, I went to this group. I was like, what am I doing here? But the Holy Spirit, just like the Divine Will group years ago when I went, and I said something, and I was like, why did I say that? I don't want to go to that ladies' church. And I went, and it helped me so much. So I'm just saying, holy habits, find holy people, bring them into your life. Don't say, I don't have anyone like that in my life. Go to your parish activities.
They have
Every
small groups, beautiful small groups, and every parish has a small group.
And you
Just
will meet
just sign
someone
up
like
to one.
Jeanette who pulls people. You will meet someone like her.
I'm just pushy. I'm just pushy.
But that's a good part of you that I like, because I don't normally, I'm like, people stay away from me. I'm not a people. So you will keep going to those groups. It may not be the first one you go to. Keep going to them. You will find someone, and push yourself a little bit, because you never know. But don't put yourself in any danger.
God bless you all. I gotta get to cooking now. Bye.
Bye.